666. Perhaps no number in human history evokes such immediate, visceral fear and morbid fascination. Whispered in prophecies, scrawled in horror fiction, branded onto the underbelly of conspiracy theories. 666, the number of the beast. For nearly 2 millennia, this cryptic cipher, found in the final apocalyptic book of the Bible, the Book of Revelation, has haunted the human imagination. It speaks of a future time of tribulation, a charismatic global leader known as the Beast or Antichrist, and a mysterious mark required for all commerce placed on the right hand or the forehead. To receive the mark is to pledge allegiance to the beast. To refuse it means economic exclusion, persecution, even death. But beyond the sensationalism, beyond the horror tropes and date-setting fanatics, lies a profound mystery and a timeless spiritual challenge. What did the Apostle John, exiled on the Isle of Patmos, truly mean when he penned those fateful words? What is the mark of the beast? And what is the real significance of that terrifying number, 666? Is it a literal microchip, a future global currency, the name of a specific political leader? Or is it something deeper, more symbolic, a code hidden within the text that reveals a truth relevant not just to a future apocalypse, but to every generation? Today, we embark on a deep investigation into one of the Bible's most debated prophecies. We'll journey back to the 1st century, decode the symbolism, analyze the historical context, explore the leading interpretations of 666, and uncover the crucial life or death lesson embedded within this ancient warning. A lesson about loyalty, worship, and the ultimate choice every human being must make. Forget the hype. It's time to uncover the truth about the mark of the beast. Our investigation begins where the prophecy originated, the Book of Revelation, written around 95 AD by the Apostle John during his exile on the Roman penal colony of Patmos. This wasn't a philosophical treatise, it was an apocalypse, an unveiling, a series of vivid, often terrifying visions given to John by the resurrected Christ, revealing what must soon take place. Revelation is written in a unique genre, apocalyptic literature. Common in Judaism and early Christianity during times of persecution, this style uses rich symbolism, numerology, dramatic imagery, beasts, angels, cosmic battles, and often coded language to convey a message of hope and divine vindication to a suffering audience, while simultaneously critiquing oppressive earthly powers. Understanding this genre is crucial. Taking every image literally often misses the deeper intended meaning. The context: Rome and emperor worship. John was writing during a period of intense persecution under the Roman Empire, likely during the reign of Emperor Domitian. A key feature of this era was the burgeoning imperial cult, the mandatory worship of the Roman emperor as a god, i.e., Dominus et Deus, Lord and God. Participation in this cult, often involving burning incense or offering sacrifices to the emperor's image, was seen as a test of loyalty to Rome. For early Christians, whose core confession was Jesus is Lord, this presented an impossible conflict. Refusal to participate in emperor worship was treason, often punishable by imprisonment, confiscation of property, or death. Economic life was also deeply intertwined with the pagan system. Trade guilds often required participation in pagan rituals or feasts. Christians faced immense pressure to compromise their faith simply to survive. It is against this backdrop of state-enforced idolatry and economic coercion that John receives his vision of the beasts in Revelation chapter 13. The key players in Revelation 13. The dragon, introduced in chapter 12, explicitly identified as Satan, the ultimate source of rebellion against God. The first beast, from the sea, a monstrous figure with features combining leopard, bear, and lion, evoking Daniel's vision of empires, having 10 horns and 7 heads, given power and authority by the dragon. This beast is almost universally interpreted as representing oppressive, blasphemous political power, embodied in John's day by the Roman Empire and its deified emperor, but archetypically representing any godless state power throughout history that demands ultimate allegiance. It receives a seemingly fatal wound but recovers, causing the world to marvel and worship it. The second beast, also called the false prophet later in Revelation. This beast looks like a lamb, a deceptive imitation of Christ, but speaks like a dragon. It serves the first beast, performs great signs like calling fire from heaven to deceive people, and enforces the worship of the first beast. This figure is generally interpreted as representing false religion or ideology that props up and legitimizes the godless state power, compelling worship through deception and coercion. It is this second beast, the false prophet, who institutes the infamous mark. Let's look at the specific text. Revelation 13:16-18. It also forced all people, great and small, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hands or on their foreheads, so that they could not buy or sell unless they had the mark, which is the name of the beast or the number of its name. This calls for wisdom. Let the person who has insight calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man. That number is 666. This calls for wisdom. Calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man. That number is 666. This verse is both an invitation and a challenge. John implies the number can be calculated, requiring wisdom and insight. Over the centuries, this has led to intense speculation and several major interpretative approaches. Interpretation 1. Gematria, the Nero Caesar hypothesis. This is the most historically grounded and widely accepted interpretation among many scholars. It relies on Gematria, an ancient practice common in Hebrew, Greek, and other cultures, where letters are assigned numerical values. Names could thus be calculated to yield a number, often used for coding or symbolism. John was writing primarily to a Jewish Christian audience familiar with Hebrew and Aramaic. The theory posits that 666 is the numerical value of the name and title of a specific man known to John's readers, Nero Caesar. Here's how the calculation works. Take the Greek Neron Caesar, Nero Caesar, transliterated into Hebrew letters, Nun 50, Resh 200, Vav 6, Nun 50, Kof 100, Samek 60, Resh 200. Add the values 50 plus 200 plus 6 plus 50 plus 100 plus 60 plus 200 equals 666. This calculation is precise and uses standard Hebrew Gematria. Why Nero? Historical context. Emperor Nero reigned 54 to 68 AD, was the first Roman emperor to systematically persecute Christians. He was infamous for his cruelty, decadence, and megalomania. He even demanded divine honors. Though he died about 30 years before Revelation was written, the trauma of his persecution lingered. Nero Redivivos myth. A popular myth circulated in the late 1st century that Nero hadn't actually died, but would return, or had returned in the person of Domitian, to wreak havoc. John might be tapping into this fear, using Nero's number as a code for the spirit of Antichrist, embodied in the current persecuting emperor, likely Domitian, and future tyrannical rulers. The beast whose fatal wound healed could even allude to this myth of Nero's return. Number of a man. The text explicitly says it's the number of a man, fitting Nero perfectly. A wrinkle. 616. Some early manuscripts of Revelation actually have the number 616, not 666. Intriguingly, if you use the Latin spelling of Nero Caesar and calculate its Hebrew Gematria, it adds up to 616. This variation might suggest different scribes adapting the code based on whether their readers were more familiar with the Greek or Latin form of the emperor's name, potentially strengthening the Nero identification. Interpretation 2. Symbolic number, the ultimate imperfection. Another major interpretation views 666 not as a code for a specific person, but as a purely symbolic number. In biblical numerology, 7 often represents divine perfection, completeness, and holiness. For example, 7 days of creation, 7 seals, 7 trumpets. 6, falling short of 7, often represents humanity, imperfection, sin, and incompleteness. Man was created on the 6th day. Goliath was 6 cubits tall. Nebuchadnezzar's statue was 60 cubits high and 6 wide. Therefore, 666 could be seen as the ultimate symbol of human failure and rebellion against God, tripled for emphasis. It represents humanity trying to achieve godlike status or perfection apart from God, but constantly falling short. The unholy Trinity. Some see 666 as representing the counterfeit, unholy Trinity, the dragon, Satan, the beast, Antichrist, and the false prophet, mimicking the divine Trinity but rooted in ultimate imperfection, 666. Man exalted. It symbolizes man worshiping man, placing human power and achievement at the center instead of God. It's the number of ultimate humanism deified. Strengths. This view doesn't rely on specific historical figures or complex calculations. It provides a timeless meaning applicable to any era where humanity exalts itself against God. It fits the symbolic nature of Revelation well. Weaknesses. It doesn't fully engage with John's explicit instruction to calculate the number, or that it's the number of a man. Interpretation 3. Future literal technological fulfillment. In recent decades, particularly with advancements in technology, many have interpreted the mark and the number 666 in a more literal, future-oriented way. The mark as technology.
Speculation often centers on technologies like implantable microchips, RFID tags, biometric IDs, or global digital currencies that could potentially be used to control commerce and track individuals, fulfilling the buy or sell prophecy. 666 embedded. Some look for the number 666 embedded in barcodes, computer systems, or future identification methods. Critique. While these technologies certainly demonstrate the potential for the kind of control Revelation describes, interpreting the mark solely as a specific future technology faces several issues. Ignoring original context. It often disregards the first-century context and the likely meaning for John's original audience, like the Nero hypothesis. Date setting. It can lead to sensationalism and specific, often failed predictions about imminent fulfillment tied to current events or technologies. Missing the principle. It risks focusing on the mechanism, the chip, the code, rather than the meaning, allegiance, worship, compromise. The investigator's assessment. The Gematria theory, Nero, provides the strongest historical anchor explaining John's call for calculation and the number of a man within the first-century context. The Symbolic theory offers a timeless theological meaning about human rebellion against God. Modern technological interpretations highlight the enduring relevance of the principles of control and forced allegiance described in the prophecy. Perhaps the wisest approach combines these. John likely used Nero's number, 666, as a coded reference to the tyrannical spirit of Rome, and as a symbol, 6 being imperfection, of all human systems that deify themselves and oppose God. While the form of the mark might evolve with technology, the underlying choice it represents, worshiping the system or worshiping God, remains the constant, crucial element.
What is this mark? The text describes it functionally before giving the number. Universality. It's imposed on all people, regardless of social status, like great and small, rich and poor, free and slave. This signifies a totalizing system that leaves no one exempt. Location. Placed on their right hands or on their foreheads. These locations are significant. The forehead represents belief, thought, and allegiance. The right hand represents actions, work, and commerce. The mark signifies a total commitment, both internal belief and external action, to the beast's system. Some scholars also see this as a deliberate parody or inversion of Jewish practices, like wearing phylacteries containing scripture on the forehead and arm, Deuteronomy 8:8, or the seal of God mentioned elsewhere in Revelation chapter 7, which is placed only on the foreheads of God's servants, signifying divine ownership and protection. Function. Economic control. The mark's primary practical function is economic. It becomes the sole requirement for participation in the marketplace. They could not buy or sell unless they had the mark. This depicts a system of absolute economic control, where survival itself is tied to allegiance to the beast. Refusal means starvation, poverty, and exclusion from society. This resonates powerfully with John's original audience facing Roman pressure. Refusing to participate in emperor worship or pagan guild practices could indeed lead to economic ruin. The mark represents the ultimate formalization of this choice: integrate into the godless system and survive physically, or remain faithful to Christ and face potentially lethal consequences. Identification. The mark is identified as the name of the beast or the number of its name. This links the mark directly to the identity and authority of the oppressive power. Taking the mark is not merely an economic transaction. It is an act of identification with and worship of the beast. It's choosing a side in the cosmic conflict. So, the mark itself symbolizes total allegiance, intellectual, practical, and economic, to a system that stands in direct opposition to God. It's the ultimate anti-covenant sign. But what about that number?
Understanding the mark and the number is crucial, but the true weight of the prophecy lies in the consequences of the choice it forces. Revelation paints a terrifying picture of the eternal fate awaiting those who receive the mark. Immediately following the description of the mark in chapter 13, chapter 14 issues a stark threefold angelic warning. The third angel declares, Revelation 14, 9-11, "If anyone worships the beast and its image and receives its mark on their forehead or on their hand, they too will drink the wine of God's fury, which has been poured full strength into the cup of his wrath. They will be tormented with burning sulfur in the presence of the holy angels and of the Lamb. And the smoke of their torment will rise forever and ever. There will be no rest, day or night, for those who worship the beast and its image, or for anyone who receives the mark of its name." This is arguably one of the most terrifying passages in the entire Bible. The language is absolute and final. Drinking God's fury, not diluted mercy, but full-strength wrath. Eternal torment, described with burning sulfur, witnessed by angels and Christ himself. No rest day or night, an unending state of suffering forever and ever. Why so severe? The nature of the choice. The severity of the punishment reflects the gravity of the offense. Taking the mark of the beast is portrayed not as a simple economic necessity or a momentary lapse, but as a deliberate, conscious act of idolatry. Explicitly, worshiping the beast and its image. It's choosing the counterfeit over the Creator. Rejection of God. It's siding with the dragon, Satan, and his earthly representative against God and his Christ. Final allegiance. In the context of the final tribulation, it represents an irreversible pledge of loyalty to the forces of evil. The mark signifies that a person has willingly and knowingly traded eternal salvation for temporary physical survival and integration into the beast's system. It's the ultimate act of spiritual treason. The counterpoint, endurance of the saints. Immediately after this dire warning, John offers a word of encouragement to believers. Revelation 14:12. This calls for patient endurance on the part of the people of God who keep his commands and remain faithful to Jesus. The implication is clear. Refusing the mark will require immense, patient endurance. It will mean facing economic hardship, persecution, and likely martyrdom. But the eternal reward for faithfulness stands in contrast to the eternal torment awaiting those who compromise. The mark forces the ultimate binary choice: temporary suffering for eternal glory, or temporary comfort for eternal damnation. There is no middle ground.
For centuries, the prophecy of the mark of the beast has fueled fear, speculation, and often misguided attempts to identify specific technologies or political figures as the fulfillment. Barcodes, credit cards, social security numbers, RFID chips, vaccine passports, digital IDs. The list of candidates is endless and constantly updated with each new technological or geopolitical shift. But does this frantic search for the literal mark miss the point? While the prophecy likely points towards a specific future culmination, the principle behind the mark of the beast is timeless and acutely relevant right now. The core issue: where is your ultimate allegiance? The fundamental question posed by Revelation 13 isn't what technology will the Antichrist use, but who or what do you worship? The forehead. What dominates your thoughts, beliefs, and worldview? Is it God's truth or the prevailing ideologies of the world's systems, materialism, nationalism, self-worship? The right hand. What directs your actions, your work, your economic life?
Are your choices guided by obedience to God's commands and ethical principles, or by the pragmatic demands of a system that often prioritizes profit and power over righteousness? These are the subtle marks, the choices of allegiance we make every day. The dramatic future scenario described by John serves as the ultimate stark manifestation of a choice that humanity has always faced. Who is your Lord? God, or the competing systems of the world empowered by the adversary? Moving from fear to faithfulness. Understanding the mark of the beast shouldn't lead to paranoia or date setting. It should lead to self-examination and a renewed commitment to unwavering faithfulness to Christ today. Focus on foundational loyalty. The best preparation for any future tribulation is cultivating a deep, unshakable relationship with Jesus Christ right now. Practice discernment. Learn to recognize how worldly systems demand allegiance in subtle ways and choose God's way instead, even when it's costly. Live without compromise. Build a life of integrity where your beliefs, forehead, and actions, right hand, align with God's word regardless of societal pressure. Find strength in community. The early Christians facing Roman pressure found strength in fellowship. Connect with other believers for support and accountability. The ultimate defense against the mark of the beast isn't knowing the exact form it will take. It's having your heart and life already marked by allegiance to the Lamb.
666, the number of the beast, a symbol that has haunted history, representing the ultimate human arrogance, the deification of worldly power, and the terrifying choice between compromise and conviction. Our investigation suggests that while possibly rooted in a specific historical code, Nero Caesar, its enduring power lies in its symbolism, the triple imperfection of humanity seeking glory apart from God. The mark itself represents total allegiance to this godless system, required for survival in a world increasingly hostile to faith. But the story doesn't end with the beast's number. The book of Revelation contrasts 666 with another number, the 144,000, sealed with God's name on their foreheads. And ultimately, it points beyond numbers to a name, the name of the Lamb, Jesus Christ, through whom salvation is found. The real mystery isn't identifying the Antichrist or predicting the exact form of the mark. The real challenge, the call for wisdom issued by John thousands of years ago, resonates today. In a world demanding conformity, where subtle pressures constantly push us to compromise our beliefs and actions, who will you worship? Whose mark will define your identity? Will you choose the temporary security of the beast's system, numbered for destruction? Or will you choose the patient endurance of the saints, marked for eternity by allegiance to Christ? That is the choice, and it's a choice we make, not just in some distant apocalyptic future, but in the small and large decisions of our lives, right here, right now.